Wilcox, and I'm Head of Digital Consulting here at Unipro. So Unipro is a specialist custom software consultancy and development partner. We've been built on 25 years worth of experience working with many of the world's leading brands in highly regulated industries, such as pharmaceutical, wealth management, and insurance. So today I'm going to take you through some industry insights, some pains and some challenges, and share with you some of the strategies and solutions to address them. So one of the biggest issues we come across is data quality, which seems to be an industry-wide challenge. Now, this can be due to some of the following reasons. Dirty data quality due to poorly completed application forms. Now, these often stem from being PDF or printed versions, filled in by hand, or maybe they are then translated into the databases and as keying errors by customer service staff or advisor staff. Now, this has a massive implication on anybody who has to work on those documents later down the road because they essentially become unstructured. I'll come back to that piece in a little while. So the acquisition of books of business. So this essentially is where you buy some business off of another company. You might have 4,000 records, but you might also inherit those data issues. So that data quality can really be dependent on where you got the data from and the quality that has been purchased. So what I'm trying to get to here as well is that you might also be buying really a completely different data model to your own. So when you buy that data, you might have to go through a whole process of validating, transforming and cleaning that data before you can actually start to work and start to service those customers. So obviously the regulators are going to be looking over your shoulder because as soon as you've got that, you need to be servicing those customers to meet consumer duty based on all of the regulations in the industry. So some of the issues with going through that process, companies get caught with just not having enough people to work through this, what we call an ETL process. So that's extract, transform and load the data, migrate it across to your own databases. And you need some data analysts and you need engineers in order to do that effectively. And sometimes outdated techniques are being used. So there can be some risk to the business as usual if you're not doing the right processes in transferring that data. And you can be doing these things in parallel, and there's lots of other solutions there to help speed up that process. I mean, we work with companies that have been stalled longer than a year transferring data to new systems. Maybe your source data is in bad shape, so maybe it's not structured in a way that can be migrated easily to. And this is often really difficult, right? Because over the years, your database will have grown, morphed, and changed. People have added tables to it. It can turn into this sort of big monster over time. But maybe you're looking to get more BI and MI capability, more insights from your data. Now, quite often, due to some of the unstructured data or poorly architected data issues, the insights that you require, you just can't get them out of your database. But really, the best starting point to really gain those insights that you need is to really know laser sharp exactly what you want to learn from your data in the first place. Then you can build some models around them. So you can abstract pieces of data from the main database and build other tables, and form these sort of separate insights data marts. Now, let's move on to the second point here, the monolith. So when I talk about a monolith, it's not really a common term outside of software. So to explain this a little bit, if you could be, this really hinders companies if they are sitting and using a monolith as well. They really lag behind in the industry if they're dealing with one of these types of systems. So a monolith is where you have the front end of your portal, the website or the software, and it's linked to the back end directly. So it's tightly coupled. So it's very difficult to update and develop. You could have hundreds, if not thousands of queries from the front end to the back end, trying to make sure that you can develop this is often a massive challenge. So outside of that issue, you might also be completely reliant on your software provider to make these changes. So many of the off-the-shelf systems, or COTS systems, as some people call them, they won't meet your exact business needs. So therefore, some customization is required. So I think a good analogy here is like you can get a ready meal from the supermarket. It looks good, it looks tasty, it looks like it's got everything you need for that situation. But then you're told you have to eat that ready meal the whole time. Your needs, your tastes, your wants, they change over time, right? But you don't know the ingredients that made up that ready meal. You can't swap any of them out, and you can't make any changes, and you're just stuck with ready meals every day. So that's a little bit like the whole COTS analogy, that as your business invariably will change over time, and you have your own unique selling points about your company, COTS software doesn't always match. Okay, there's a fundamental clash as well in the business model. So software providers, or COTS software providers, they're in the business to sell you licenses. Everything around their business is to sell more of those licenses. Their business model means that they don't provision enough resource for custom feature development. So, in our experience, this ultimately leads to slowing progress for anybody who's signed up to a COTS software provider. You're binding yourself to their resource capability, their ecosystem, and their framework. So, you have to stick with whatever development language that system is built in. And therefore, as we all know, there's a bit of a talent gap when it comes to good developers, and that might really hinder both their and your progress in growing your business in this digital age. So the cost of ownership also is not just the license fee. It's the cost of all the people who are required to maintain and support that software over its lifespan. So it's also that cost of any missed opportunities if you don't get to market in time. Okay? So you might think that changing from this system that you're sort of wedded to, if you like, is going to be really painful. That you need to keep running your business as usual. Everything about your business sits around the heart of this system. So it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to do this big bang change with modern platforms and methods. You can move gradually over time. So moving on to the third point here. Are you stifled by slow development? So 20 to 30 years ago, in a less digital world, we came up with ways of defining software and designing software which were very well documented. They were waterfall, they were relatively slow. Have you ever read or had to read a 200-page software definition document or scope document? Now, these processes where then you get comments and you get contributions and you go through, 20 versions of the document, these were okay when software was moving at a pace that it was 20 to 30 years ago, but these days they don't suffice. They really don't keep up with the change that a business needs to move in the digital age. So that's if you've decided to build some more new software. But a lot of teams we find also are just struggling with the day-to-day business. So technical debt, they have mountains of it and they need to get through it in order to, before they can even think about new development. And quite often, even if they start new development, they're going back and having to fix things that they rushed before, causing more technical debt, before they can move on and build a new bit of software. And we all know that we must produce bug-free, functional, accessible services to meet regulatory requirements. Now, do you get to the end of your development process, but spend weeks or even months getting to a release due to extended testing and quality assurance phases? Or quite simply, are your build overheads too high? So in early requirements gathering and definition phases, the broader business, all the stakeholders, they all input into the definition and design of the software. So initially you'll have more senior people, tech, platform, regulatory, governance people, all getting involved. And then you're getting to a design phase. And in this phase, you might have data people, front-end people, back-end people, QA, DevOps, integration experts, product, UX, marketing, so on. And quite often what we see is development teams having to go back and forth to get clarifications or more insight before they can really move forward dynamically. So literally are too many cooks spoiling your digital broth. I'm going to move on and expand on this a little bit more before I move on. So your development team should be able to share a peak. So you see the green arrow here, this should be very dynamic. Now you might have multiple teams that you might split up via product type. They might be to do with features within a bigger piece of software, like you might have API, you might have a notifications team, you might have a search team. But that team needs to be dynamic and they need to be relatively small, ideally around 5 or 6 people. And essentially they will need to have that amount of autonomy, trust and agility, and they really, really need to be able to understand one another and work closely together. And quite often in the world of digital, people forget how people are and how people need to work together, and these are essentially people who are building your software. We need to try and reduce the cognitive load that this team has, which means there's process prior to asking them to develop anything. And it means that they need to not have to think about so many of the other things involved in maybe more traditional ways of developing. So DevOps being one of them, or always having to go back to a product owner in order to get information. There are ways we can move forward with lighter weight models. So, enough you say about the challenges. We know what we're struggling with. You know what you're struggling with, and maybe you're not sure exactly how to fix them. So we've put together some pointers for you, and I'm going to just run you through those now. So, number 1, we want to put you and your data in the driving seat. So, capture data at source. If your company are using paper apps and PDFs, then you're slowing yourself down right from the get-go. Now, all you need are simple, secure forms with strong levels of validation. So try and capture customer feedback also through chat and contact forms, and then treat this information as gold and store it in a way that will inform your product insights and customer insights later on to support that BI and MI initiative that I referred to earlier. And is your data really structured and standardized according to your business needs? So is this what you want, not your vendor, not the structure of a company that you've inherited, not the structure of one particular department who has one set of needs? It needs to be standardized across the whole business, so that you know that when you do buy a new book or do buy a new company, that you have a format that you conform to and that you can all grow in the same direction. Okay, so you can build that structured database in the best way, in the most optimized way possible. And it needs to be like that before you migrate into it. This ultimately has the knock-on effect. It will affect your customers, your advisor networks, and your regulators. Do you want to have more control over your database? So architect your system to do exactly that. Whether in the cloud or on-premise, you can abstract your software and databases from your source systems by linking via APIs. So there's an analogy I like to use here, which is essentially, in modern cars, you'll have an engine management system, and that will be like the connecting system. And then you have lots of different parts of the car. So instead of binding everything together, an engine management system essentially allows you to tweak and change levels of certain performing aspects of the car. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is essentially give you the flexibility and control of linking systems and not binding your two systems together. You want to move away from that monolith. So we can architect your system to do exactly that. Now you can do so without being so tied to your database. I'll move on to that a little bit more in a minute. But unstructured data. So I referred earlier to all the PDFs and printed documents. you can convert those. So there's some image recognition software and some things that you can use, some machine learning that can essentially pull all that information out, or it can be tagged in some scenarios and then converted into structured data, things that can be searched in databases. So all of those old policies that you issued many years ago that might be handwritten, you can convert them into structured data. Then you can learn from everything about your business and about those policies quickly. So when an inquiring customer asks something about their policy, rather than having a human do that, you can use technology to scan all of those things and essentially come up with answers to those inquiries super quick, more efficient. You can utilize some Gen AI to gain simple answers and reply to those customers. So that's the part of that process when you might enable some intelligent chat. So when you're replying to those answers, you can use natural language and generative AI to make it sound like a human and make it sound personalized to that person who's inquired. So you're using some mix of AI tech along with basic chat functionality all into the same solution. Now, the technologies I'm speaking about here, you don't have to build them all yourself up front. They can be leveraged, and there's many useful services that still exist out there. I should point out as well, though, by implementing all these AI services, we're not saying sack a load of people, in essence. We are saying use them to do more intelligent work, where there's very simple things like, I don't know, I forgot my password, or I need to just know what I've got left in my policy. And that's all. A very simple answer to a simple question. You can redeploy your humans in areas where you can use the true intelligence of humans to do that work. I'm going to just move on to the point about decoupled systems. So decoupling a system, I'm going to use a bit of a diagram actually to show this. So you can decouple your system to be way more dynamic. So every bit of software can be made by modules of smaller pieces of software. So you've got things like dealing, illustrations and applications, you might have a policy inquiries module, you might also have a notification system, or a system that just manages users. So all of those things, they're just loosely glued together via APIs. And what that means is it gives you a lot more power to change and make small increments and changes to each one of these, and do that quickly and then release it and deploy it without impacting the whole system. So changing the ingredients in your meal, for example, if you want to swap those out, do something different. If it's not a pre-done ready meal, then you've got that choice, right? So you've got all these different modules. Or if you're back to the car analogy, you want to swap out, I don't know, a suspension system. And that operates essentially on its own and then is connected cleverly by a computer, which essentially is representing these API details, right? So this front-end service can be architected as a service-driven architecture and then decoupled via APIs to the databases beneath. So by doing things in this way, it brings about a whole load of benefits. As I mentioned, there's the flexibility and agility of being able to update those. So you don't have to wait for a big whole release every time you make a change. There are instances where one software provider will provide just in the same instance to multiple customers, just with a different front end. So even all those other customers that they supply to, they have to have the changes you have. And if they want changes, then you all have to have the same. I've just been speaking with a few people recently, and it's a nightmare. Every time they want to introduce something new, they have to do this sort of round robin and process of making sure that basically everybody else has them. Rather than having separate instances of a core master software, everybody got to have the same thing, and then you have to inherit everything that they want developed. So there's a risk in how these older companies have set up their architecture. Now, it also gives you the choice of technology diversity. So I don't have to get all these bits of tech from the same place. I can use, say, I don't know, an ID and authorization system from one provider, or a CRM from another. I could use a chat service from another person. I could use, there's companies out there that have made really robust services that, these bits you might get either off the shelf or from a platform as a service, and then tie all these together. And it makes sure that you don't put all your technology in one basket. All your eggs aren't in one basket. You de-risk your tech stack by democratizing how you set up your system. Now, a service-driven architecture will force you to develop better practices. So managing inter-service communication, you have to stay on top of that. You have to be close on that, and you have to set up monitoring systems to ensure that this sort of stuff works. And then ensuring data consistency across these services. Now, this all requires careful planning, architectural design, and ongoing maintenance to reap the full benefits. It will make you go faster, it will help you achieve better results, and it will give your team the ability to be more dynamic. So, number 3 here. Points 1 and 2 are more the technical foundational accelerators. It's then important to pay attention to some of the more human points. After all, it's people who are developing your tech, right? Okay. So by taking a blend of the lightweight, holistic approaches to planning and service design, making sure you're sort of doing more of a waterfall process up front where you're planning, and then you mix in with agile iteration to move faster. Now, I'll explain this with our 6-step process. We work with our clients in an upfront strategic consulting phase, using tried and tested models and processes to extract all the vital information from a business. We'll then move into a design phase, utilising service and UX design with proven mapping and modelling techniques, all the time preparing to go faster. Where appropriate, we'll run prototyping and proof of concepts. This isn't to ensure that we validate features with real users and remove any risks from new technologies. So you don't invest too much before you go on up front. So once we've defined, designed and developed all the difficult bits, we're primed to go fast, up to 4 times faster than any traditional methods and technologies. Now at Unipro, we've spent years developing decoupled service-driven systems for global leaders. We build in many development accelerators and work with componentized design systems so we can reuse many different aspects of the software. That could be front-end or back-end modules. All with the goal to make your software development process go faster. We'll work with you to integrate on top of existing legacy systems or to help you gradually move away from those, and allow for easier updates to online services and give you the ability to build multiple product portals with slick onboarding processes where you can validate that information and capture great customer insights and data. We'll help you create dynamic dashboards and insightful analytics, and we'll drive innovation with dedicated product development teams, and we can help you with those. So, all with the goal of unlocking efficiencies, streamlining workflows, and helping you get to market faster, whilst ultimately driving profit and reducing your costs, giving you and your company the full control over your digital destiny and empowering independence. At Unipro, our promise is to help you build digital capability through consulting, development, training, and augmented resource, empowering you with future-ready systems that you can rely on.